Okay, before we begin this week's episode of Ups and Downs of SmackDown, I have a list here of wrestlers who have vanished, and I would like someone to tell me where they went, because WWE doesn't seem to care. We have Rhea Ripley, we have Buddy Murphy, Mojo Rawley, Aleister Black, Elias, and Tucker. There they are, they're right there, and where the hell have they gone? Nobody seems to know. I would like some information. Obviously that's not going to happen, so let's all just calm down and move on. But thank you very much for joining me. My name is Simon Miller. You are watching WhatCulture Wrestling. And given that World Wrestling Entertainment just gave us a brand new wrestling show, I think we have to take this, the finger of power, and give the good bits an up and the bad bits a down. So now I've decided to do it. Let's do that. You already know how SmackDown started. Roman Reigns was moseying on down because he runs the WWE, and Michael Cole and Corey Graves were like, oh, there's Roman Reigns, he's in such a foul mood. Like this was some kind of a surprise. Roman Reigns is officially in a foul mood every single day of his damn life. I mean, you can literally disrespect him by saying, hi Roman, in the wrong way. Not that I'm disrespecting him right now. He's the head of the table. Oh, Roman Reigns, I love you. No one tell him I said anything. Let's run. Adam Pearce was already in the ring, and after Roman Reigns had turned his attention to Edge and said, Edge is a piece of trash, I'm in Edge's head. One day I'm going to take Edge's hair and cut it all off and then eat it because I'm a crazy person. He turned to Adam and said, right, let's sort everything out for the Elimination Chamber. Because as it turns out, in Reigns' contract, he does have to defend his title at that pay-per-view. And Adam Pearce was like, look, I've been trying to sort this out all week. Can we just put it to bed? I have other stuff to do. Now, at first it sounded like Roman was going to have to defend his title within the Elimination Chamber, but then Paul Heyman got the microphone and said, look, we know what it says in the deal, but we've read the fine print, we've read the small print, and what we're going to do is this. He will defend his championship at the Elimination Chamber, but it won't be in the Elimination Chamber match, and whoever wins that will face Roman on the same night of that show. Honestly, what a good idea. I don't understand how WWE can have two different programs, and on one, you're doing stuff like this, and on the other, you have an old man and a younger woman who I think in their spare time just bang. I guess as long as they're happy. Pearce then told us that there was going to be a bunch of qualification matches on this SmackDown, and anybody who wanted to be in it would have to be AJ Styles. That's not true, but it should have been. There was this weird twist when Pearce was like, oh, just one more thing. I've decided there's two superstars who deserve to be in it anyway, and one is Jey Uso, and the other is
Kevin Owens.
But look, I get it, I totally understand. Adam Pearce, rightfully so, is livid at Roman Reigns, because Roman Reigns is making his life a living hell, so this was his way of being like, I still have the power like He-Man, and now these guys, they're going in. Roman then for a split second thought that he would murder Adam Pearce. Honestly, you should have seen him face, and thankfully Paul Heyman was able to talk him down. And then in the back, Sonya Deville walked up to Adam and she was like, oh man, can't believe you stood up to Roman Reigns like that. And I was like, Sonya, look, I really like you. I don't think that was a man standing up to anyone. That was a man who was trembling in fear. Still, it was a great scene to start the show. I really enjoyed it. And it gets it up. It was then into our first tag team match of the evening, and our powers that be had decided, I guess to speed things up, that whichever team won this would then go into the Elimination Chamber. So it was the Mysterios taking on the random team of Sami Zayn and Baron Corbin, but I will tell you this, what fun I had. Zayn promised to win this despite the fact that WWE clearly wants Rey and Dominic to be victorious because they're going after a certain market to try and increase their audience, and he also admitted he wasn't a massive fan of teaming with Baron Corbin, but when needs must. Sami Zayn is so good, he always filling in all the holes. Father and son were flying around at first, including this crazy dive that Dominic Mysterio did. Sami Zayn was trying to get his hands on Rey, so Dom was like, blah, 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 I'm not gonna let that happen, and he dived out of the ring, and he had so much momentum, even he went careering face first into the announce table. I won't hear it otherwise. Dominic Mysterio is a good professional wrestler. I don't know why I talked through my teeth. Rey was then somehow reversing everything into Hurricane Ranas. Like Baron Corbin went for a powerbomb and he did it, and then he did it again after a choke slam. And then you always had that wonderful moment where Rey and Dommy Boy hit the double 619. I don't know about you, but when I see it, I cross my arms like, oh man, aren't families delicious? Dominic also had this great hot tag that ended in a near fall after a tornado DDT. But I suppose we all knew what was going to happen here. And then it happened. He turned around and walked straight into the haluva kick, which means, yes, Barry Coleman and Sami Zayn have just qualified for the Elimination Chamber. And honestly, WWE needs to push this stuff more. If you go onto social media and watch some of the conspiracy documentary that Sami is filming, you see Dominic and Ray having an argument. So maybe bad times are coming to Pie Town. I mean, we should have guessed it here too, because afterwards Ray got on a microphone and said, "Son, you are an embarrassment." That bit didn't happen. It was also a little bit of a shame because I would love to have seen that dynamic in the chamber, but who cares? Good tag team match, having Sami Zayn and Baron Corbin in the chamber, well, it's just what WWE does. We're clearly in a rush to get this sorted too, which is kind of true because Elimination Chamber is basically next week. So we were back to Adam Pearce and Sonya Deville when our World Tag Team Champions walked in, the Dirty Dogs, and they were like, "Look, we want to be in the Elimination Chamber because we have great hair." At first, Sonya and Adam were a bit confused because they thought they wanted to be in the same pod. No, we don't want to be that. We want to be in separate pods. We just want to be the World Champion, or the Universal Champion in this case. And again, because we're desperate to get people in there, they did say they could, as long as they beat Daniel Bryan and Cesaro in the main event. And of course, if they lose, Bryan and Cesaro will go in there instead. Just pro wrestling. Now, you already knew that match was going to be awesome, but at some point we do need to have a real tag team feud with tag team champions who are like, we don't need to go after under belts because we're happy with the ones we've got. Otherwise, they're kind of a bit like toys. We then just had this really bizarre bit with Sasha Banks, Reginald, and kind of Callisto, who was basically like furniture in the background. Because Sasha and the Lucha House Party guy were having a conversation when Reginald walked up to Sasha and said, "Look, I'm really sorry about what happened last week. Here's some champagne, because that's the only way I know how to apologize." Banks was a little bit dubious at first, but after the offer of a drink was a bit like, "Oh man, did you mean what you said when you thought Bianca Belair couldn't beat me?" And Reginald said yes, and then basically cartwheeled and flipped his way out the screen. But for a split second I was like, wait, is Sasha Banks gonna trust Reggie? You can't trust him. You know what he's trying to do. So I will put on my wait and see glasses. A little bit worried. Big E and Apollo Crews, though, have some serious beef. Because our Intercontinental Champion was in the ring, just being the greatest person in the world, which he is, when all of a sudden Apollo Crews interrupted him and said, "Look, Big, you don't need to go on about this anymore. I know you're about to issue an open challenge, so I thought I would get ahead of the game and accept it right now." Big E then admitted, yes, you are right, this is true, and maybe it's going to be Michael Cole, maybe it's going to be the security guard, maybe it's going to be the janitor, but I tell you who it's not going to be, Mr. Crews. It's not going to be you. The pair then got into each other's faces, with Big E even telling Apollo to go back to catering. I mean, they were having a huge row when all of a sudden Shinsuke Nakamura's music hit, because of course he was the challenger for the Intercontinental Championship. But he kind of skulked down the ramp here like a neighbour who was walked in on like a mum and dad arguing because they need some milk. And they're like, "Well, you said I could always have milk. I'm just going to get the milk. You just ignore me. I'm not here. I get the milk. Now I'm going to go back to my house." It was just really uncomfortable. But I tell you what, we then did get Big E and Shinsuke Nakamura with Apollo Crews on ringside. And I thought all of this was really good as well. Because seriously, who doesn't want that? The answer being Apollo, because not only did he keep getting up on the apron, just trying to be a stupid distraction, but as soon as Big E had hit the big ending, there he was again. He booted Big right in the face, and he caused the DQ. Now, I was going to try and be a little kinder to WWE when they do these finishes and try and take it at face value, but this one doesn't make any sense. Why would Apollo care that Big E won? If he is mad at him and he wants to take the title off him as a "ha-ha, I got you," you should be happy he got the 1, 2, 3, but he didn't. He just got involved, and it hasn't benefited Apollo Crews at all. I mean, all it has done is means that if Shinsuke Nakamura wants to go to Adam Pearce and say, "By the way, I just got screwed, can I have another shot?" well, he'll probably get it. So this was silly. It was also a disqualification. Bring down the board. That's 13. And in this instance, it's getting down. Seth Rollins was back next, and I'm not gonna lie, I was so excited about this. Sometimes absence really does make the heart grow fonder, and that was the case right here. For some reason, a bunch of the SmackDown roster was at ringside. I suppose Seth had sent them cult mail or something saying, "Hey, come to my brand new bash, it's going to be amazing." And there was kind of a tease at first because Rollins came out to his old music, you know, which made us all go, "Oh my gosh, he's going to be a good guy." And we doubled down on that because for a split second in the ring, he was like, "I'm a dad now, I'm a changed man." It was absolute poppycock. Because he soon started going on about being a leader, and his new catchphrase is "embrace the vision," which has got to be a knock on Rey Mysterio, all things considered. And the really bizarre bit here was Seth Rollins was kind of wearing a latex suit. Like it looked like he cried all over it. It was so runny and it was so wet. He then kind of insinuated that he was the dad to the entire roster, and thankfully at that point, the wrestlers had heard enough and they started to leave. Now, because the lights had dimmed, all of a sudden they went poof and came back on. And do you know who was the last man standing that seemed like they were listening to Seth? It was none other than Cesaro. Rollins at first thought that he agreed to his bonkers way, and he got so excited he was jumping around like he'd finally got a PS5, but the Swiss Superman was like, I'm not listening to you. You're a crazy person. I'm gonna leave as well. Now, unfortunately, this was too much for Seth Rollins, and he attacked Cesaro on the rampway and went after his leg. What a dick. Surely this means, though, we are now building to Seth Rollins versus Cesaro, and if that's what I get for signing up for Seth's crazy cult, well, give me a pen and I'll put my name on the dotted line. Daniel Bryan had to make the save, which of course ties into the main event that we are going to get later, and I just appreciated having Seth Rollins back. Yeah, once more, if I had it my way, he would have been a good guy, but who cares? Seth Rollins versus Cesaro. Thumbs. Bayley then beat Liv Morgan. I kind of felt, have I seen this a lot? I feel like I have, but it's still pretty good. Up. It was off the back of Bells beating Ruby Riott last week, so this week she has to take on her partner, and of course Ruby Riott only lost because Billie Kay came out 7 days and ruined it. And around about halfway through this, we saw Tamina, and don't forget that nobody's meaner, and Natalya watching from the back, and of course they were at this kind of position. I swear, why does WWE do this constantly? If the TV had been invented and whoever had done that said, oh, you have to watch it like this, it never would have caught on. Morgan totally screwed up at one point because she went to dive off the steel stairs at Bayley, missed, and went careering into the barricade, and honestly, that looked like it sucked. And this was the opening the role model needed to start working over her shoulder. And then poof, like magic, out came Billie Kay. She wanted to apologise to Ruby, but let's face it, she hadn't picked a very good time, and Riott was trying to tell her this and got so livid and so annoyed, she took Billie Kay's resume and she threw it anywhere. Now, the referee saw this and knew, oh my gosh, wrestlers can't handle things like that. They get distracted, so he tried to get rid of these papers, and what he missed in the ring was Bayley raking the eyes of Liv Morgan and hitting the rose plant and basically stealing another victory, thanks to the former Iconic. So yes, bring it down the distraction board. I understand, mark it up again, that's number 26. But I can't lie, I was very entertained by this. Billie Kay just makes me laugh. Bayley is great. And if we are actually going to put Bayley and Billie Kay together, well, I've decided I'm all for that. In fact, make them the flipping tag team champions. That's right, I said it. Quick interview with Daniel Bryan and Cesaro followed, and surely we are doubling down on this idea that Cesaro is about to become a good guy. Because he was all like, I know I've been beaten up and I know Seth Rollins screwed me, but I'm still going to compete later because I am a valiant Swiss man. It also made me realise that I just want one Roman Reigns versus Cesaro matchup for the Universal Championship. Cesaro doesn't have to win, that's fine, I get it. I just want to be able to witness it with my eyes. It was then the Street Profits versus Chad Gable and Otis, and much like we were talking about earlier when it comes to the tag team division, aside from a few quips from Michael Cole and Corey Graves, I would like more of a story where it's like, oh my gosh, can one of these win and become the tag team #1 contenders? But look, all four guys are really good. This was fine. We did see Gable and Otis training beforehand when Otis was doing squats as Chad Gable sprayed smoke in his face, because of course the Street Profits bring the smoke, and he was teaching him how to avoid the smoke. I realise that's some of the dumbest things that I've ever said and some of the dumbest things that we've ever seen. I liked it. Gable and Dawkins stuck with some old-fashioned wrestling to begin with before Otis and Montez Ford got in there and sped things up, and Otis was running wild here at one stage. He was even able to hit the caterpillar. And I was like, man, are Alpha Academy actually going to win? Sadly, the answer was no. Because he and Chad Gable went to do one of the moves that they've been practicing, but I think what they forgot was, in a real-life environment, you have people trying to stop you, and that's what the Street Profits did. Ford basically stole Otis away, which allowed Dawkins to hit the Spinebuster. Montez Ford hit that ridiculously good-looking frog splash, and once again, the former champions just scored another victory. I'm going to have to guess at the pay-per-view, they're probably going to get their rematch. But this was just good, to be honest, and you can't get mad at that. I mean, somebody will, but they're just mad at themselves. Madness then occurred. Literal madness. Let's go. Sasha Banks arrived to talk about Bianca Belair and made it very clear at WrestleMania, I want to defend this title against you. Then Bianca Belair came out and said, well, that sounds great, because I want to beat you for that title, because I'm EST and you absolutely suck. Just before this could escalate though, out came Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, and I was truly baffled, especially because Nia was like, no one cares about you, you're a bunch of losers. I mean, what do you mean a bunch of losers? One is the Royal Rumble winner, and one is the SmackDown Women's Champ. You need to get a clue. Somehow Sasha also knew that they were going to be here, so she had a couple of videos ready. The first was Naomi flukily beating Shayna Baszler on Raw, so I was like, oh yeah, good one, Sasha Banks. And of course, the second one was Nia going for that leg drop on the apron, missing, and wharfing off and screaming, ow, my hole. So prepare yourselves, because WWE is clearly about to run this into the ground. It also showed her getting pushed through the table by Lana, and the tag team champions were so mad, they tried to beat up Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair, and as you already know, they failed, because they fail at everything they try. It also led to Bianca and Sasha dropping Nia on her tailbone, and she had to hold her mouth, so once again she didn't go, ow, my hole. And here's the thing, I thought Naomi and Lana were the #1 contenders to the titles, so why are we muddying the waters? But also too, I really don't want to get back into a situation where a women's champion is lost in the tag team scene. We saw how well that worked for Asuka, and we've already done it with Sasha and Bayley. Please don't do it again. It just doesn't click. So I don't need it in my life. I just don't, so it's getting a down. What I did need in my life, however, was the main event. Because it was the Dirty Dogs versus Daniel Bryan and Cesaro, and WWE just let them do what these four guys are capable of doing, and they're all so flippin' talented. I had a fabulous time, like a ballroom dinner. I don't even know what that is. As ever, our heroes had the early advantage before Daniel Bryan went for a dive, and Robert Roode got out of the way and he went careering into Cesaro, which of course meant by the time Daniel Bryan got back in the ring, Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler were just beating the hell out of him. From nowhere out came Baron Corbin and Sami Zayn to watch this, so I was a bit like, huh? And we also cut to the back where we saw Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman watching this on a television, but because they're normal human beings, they were just sat down, focused on the screen. They should go and teach everybody else. The story here too was that every time Bryan tried to make a tag, something happened to Cesaro. I mean, at one point he was going to get it, and then Bobby Roode just ran over there and punched the Swiss Superman right in the face. And then, of course, he did get the big hot tag. And my word, Cesaro. Honestly, right? When you start talking about the best wrestlers in the world, you have to put him in there, even if you don't put him on top. But he just makes wrestling, well, it's like making a sandwich. It's just so effortless. He did that nuts backbreaker thingamajig again when he gets somebody in a torture rack, throws them up to the skies, and then gives them the knee to the back. And surely that should become his new finisher. But at least for this week, he did what he did last week, and afterwards, he grabbed Dolph Ziggler, gave him the big swing, and then made him tap out to the sharpshooter. Now, you may, if you're a long-time watcher of Ups and Downs, you'll remember we had something called the Cesaro stock meter that would plummet and would go through the floor because he never won. Now he's getting clean wins all the time, and it makes me feel all warm and fuzzy in my tum-tum. So honestly, this was absolutely great, and of course, as soon as it had happened, Jey Uso was there with a chair, and he was beating everybody up, so in got Baron Corbin, and in got Sami Zayn, and they just started running ruckus, because of course, it's every man for himself in the Elimination Chamber. And just when you didn't know how SmackDown was going to end, Kevin Owens appeared from nowhere, and he started giving Stone Cold Stunners to everyone except for Sami Zayn. I just want to make a quick point and say, WWE, that was smart. I appreciated it. Roman was watching from the back, just getting more and more angry and more livid, because again, as I said at the start of this, that's all he does. And here is your Elimination Chamber bracket, or bunch of dudes that's going to be in it. And let's face it, on paper, it does look pretty good. Also, surely this does mean that Cesaro's going to win that and face Roman Reigns, because what else are you going to do on the Elimination Chamber? You could even have a get out jail free card here, because Cesaro could be about to win before Seth Rollins screws him over. And if you want to do a bit of a tease like, oh my gosh, did he do it because of Roman Reigns and the Shield? And then let that die because it's too soon, I would be happy with it. Honestly, SmackDown is a really easy and fun to watch wrestling show. It also means Kevin Owens was stood tall at another episode of SmackDown, and again, years ago, that never happened. And once more, I am giving the show an up. It deserves it. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about last night's episode of SmackDown. Like the video, share the video, and please subscribe. Then you can head over to WhatCulture.com. You can read articles about SmackDown. That's a thing. You can follow us on social media. Just search for WhatCulture. And if you'd like to watch another video, kapow, they're right there. My name is Simon for WhatCulture. Thank you for watching me as always. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next week.